Hello, Crimestituents. It has been too long since our last session. I want to address my absence last week. Thank you for sticking with me through that. I was very sick and just not able to make an episode happen. In fact, I recorded an episode and then had tech difficulties and was just too sick to re-record, which meant, unfortunately, we went an entire week without a session of Crime in Congress. But don't worry, I am back this week and I have a great episode to bring you. But I do have some more bad news. We are entering August recess, and last year, Crime in Congress took advantage of the whole month of August for August recess. If you don't know, in Congress, the House and the Senate take the month of August off to go be back in their districts. It dates back to the early days of Congress when DC was just too hot and swampy with no AC to do anything during August, which no AC I kind of get. Now it is a little outdated, but I benefit from it, so we're going to keep it that way. And since we are at Crime in Congress, we observed August recess. However, a month just feels like way too long to go without popping in your ear and having a little convo about some badly behaved politicians. So, we are only going to be taking the first 2 weeks of August off. This is going to give me time to batch some content and get really good quality episodes ready to hit your ears and, start the fall season off strong. And so we will have 2 weeks next month with no sessions, but I promise I will make it worth it. I also have some very, very exciting news. Crime in Congress will officially be at CrimeCon in Denver from September 5th through 7th. If you are going to CrimeCon, which is a convention for people who love true crime, I will be on Podcast Row, and I am excited to meet you. I'll have some fun swag that you can take home, and I am just so excited to get Crime in Congress out to more Crimestituents and grow our community. I truly could not be more excited about CrimeCon, and I really hope to see some Crimestituents there. All right, without further ado, hi, I'm Harley, and we're gaveling in another session of Crime in Congress. Jeff Gehrman was born August 23rd, 1953 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, to parents Max and June Gehrman. Other than that, there really isn't much information publicly available about his early life. He had a brother, Jay Gehrman. I keep wanting to say German, but it's not German, it's Gehrman. 2 sisters, Jill and Julie. And Jeff was described as a dedicated family man who was a devoted uncle, with his sisters telling KNTV that he, quote, never missed a birthday. This was despite him being a bachelor himself, unmarried without any children of his own. Speaking of bachelors, I haven't started watching it yet, but Bachelor in Paradise has totally revamped to become more like Love Island, and I've stopped watching in the past, recent years, and so I'm really excited to jump back in because it looks like they have done a complete facelift. Very excited. Okay, back to the action. Gehrman fell in love with the idea of journalism early, earning a master's degree in the subject from Marquette University. I looked it up, and apparently Marquette has a good journalism program, which is what I assume Gehrman enrolled in. He got his first job in journalism as a sprightly young intern working for the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. I imagine Jeff was like an overeager sponge in this role, soaking up all the knowledge he could get and jumping at each opportunity to dive into the action. While he likely took mundane jobs in this role, grabbing coffee and maybe reporting on the weather or local pet adoption, Jeff had a darker side to him, one that he was keen to explore. He loved true crime, like all of us listening to this podcast can relate to. He wanted to jump down the rabbit hole of all things against the law, bringing down criminals with the stroke of his pen. His goal wasn't just to be a reporter. He wanted to bring justice to the world, exposing bad actors in his own community and holding people in power accountable. Little did he know that that dream would, literally, be the death of him. Sometime after his stint at the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, he went to work at the Las Vegas Sun, where his dreams finally began to take flight. He took on the role as the reporter covering organized crime, government, politics, and the courts. You know he would have been a Crimestituents, and it's just such a shame we can't have him as a guest on this podcast because he would have been a, to quote JoJo Siwa, dream guest on my podcast. Speaking of JoJo Siwa, pop over to the comments and tell me what you think about this Betty Davis Eyes cover she's been teasing, because it is quite something. Or honestly, maybe it's already out. I can't even say I follow her that closely. I just see clips of her on TikTok. Gehrman would build quite the resume during his more than 20 years of reporting for the Las Vegas Sun. In 1997, he broke the story of the murder of a mafia associate bookmaker, Herbert Blitzstein, a well-known American mobster, gangster, bootlegger, and racketeer. He also covered the MGM Grand Fire in 1980 and the 2000 FBI sting operation into bribes taken by Clark County commissioners, which has maybe the best name I've ever heard of when it comes to secret undercover operations. G-Sting. G-Sting. Great. We will have to cover G-Sting on the pod at some point, so I'm not going to delve into all the details for you right now, but I couldn't help but mention such an iconic name. In case you didn't get the reference, it's like G-String. They were going into like strip clubs. It had to do with strippers. It was also called Strippergate. Jeff's Crimestituent credentials are just getting started, though. He authored the book Murder in Sin City, The Death of a Las Vegas Casino Boss in 2001, which sounds like a great read that delves into the death of Ted Binion, heir to the Binion's horseshoe fortune. Who knew there were heirs to horseshoe fortunes, right? It reminds me of Gretchen Wiener's dad inventing toaster strudel. He also, get this, hosted a podcast called Mobbed Up, The Fight for Las Vegas, in partnership with the Literal Mob Museum, which is one of the coolest podcasts I've ever heard of. Go check it out. Shockingly, even with this deep and impressive resume, he was laid off in 2009, reminding us once again that local journalism is dying and the best, most tenured reporters are often the first ones to go because they are the most expensive. Sad truth and reminder to subscribe to your local news outlets and actually pay for the news that you consume. Even though this podcast is free. But it's not news, it's infotainment. Seriously, if you're listening to this podcast for the news, you are in the wrong place. This is not Mobbed Up by Jeff Gehrman. Fortunately, he was quickly scooped up by the Las Vegas Review-Journal, which he joined in 2010. One of his most well-known stories came about in 2017, following the Las Vegas mass shooting, where he broke the news that the shooter actually fired at 2 jet fuel tanks before turning his aim to the music festival crowd. While this might have been the reporting he was best known for, his most infamous stories were still to come. In May of 2022, Jeff Gehrman broke the news that the Clark County Public Administrator, Robert Tellis, was a complete and utter scumbag. Okay, he may have put it much better than that, but TLDR, that's basically what it boiled down to. I'm actually going to do something I've never done before on this podcast and read this article to you word for word, because it is so well done and so integral to the telling of the story that I think it's best for you to hear it straight from Gehrman and not through my signature mix of paraphrasing and snark. Here it goes, and warning, this is very long. I'll tell you when it's done. It ran under the title County Office in Turmoil with Secret Video and Claims of Bullying, Hostility. The Clark County Public Administrator's Office has been mired in turmoil and internal dissension over the past 2 years, with allegations of emotional stress, bullying, and favoritism leading to secret videotaping of the boss and co-worker outside of the office. A half-dozen current and former employees interviewed by the Review-Journal are alleging the hostile work environment was fueled by the elected administrator of the office, Robert Tellis, carrying on an inappropriate relationship with the staffer that has harmed the office's ability to deal with the public in overseeing the estates of those who have died. The staffer, Roberta Lee Kennett, 45, has acted in some cases as an office supervisor beyond her assigned duties as one of several estate coordinators because of her favored status with Tellis, the employees said. Because of the brewing animosity, the top supervisor under Tellis, Rita Reed, decided to run against him in this year's Democratic primary. And several employees took the bold step of secretly videotaping Tellis and Lee Kennett meeting in the back seat of her car at a parking garage to show proof of the relationship. One employee filed a retaliation complaint with the county against Tellis on May 9th, records show. Both Lee Kennett and Tellis, 45, an attorney, strongly denied having any improper relationship, but acknowledged that they have become friends. Tellis said he had relied on Lee Kennett's support while making office improvements resisted by employees from the previous administration. Both are married. Tellis blames a, quote, handful of old-timers for exaggerating the extent of the relationship and falsely claiming that he has been mistreating them. He said they have filed complaints against him with the county in the past that were not substantiated, and he questions the timing of the latest accusations as he seeks a second term in office. Quote, they are unhappy with the way the office has been taken out of their control, Tellis said. All my new employees are super happy, and everyone's productive and doing well. We've almost doubled the productivity in the office, end quote. Staffers said they secretly videotaped Tellis and Lee Kennett after work several times, slipping into the back seat of her Nissan Rogue earlier this year in the shadows of a high-rise mall parking garage. The staffer said they recorded the clandestine meetings to offer proof to county officials of the office dividing relationship. Both Tellis and Lee Kennett acknowledged driving separately to the parking structure at the Las Vegas North Premium Outlets Mall several times earlier this year and entering the backseat of her car. They said they just talked about the problems in the office, okay, and only hugged each other, okay. I added the K. That's not in the article. I think it's horrible that they recorded this, and they're trying to destroy my life and my marriage when I'm actually infinitely in love with my wife, Tellis said. I was just trying to get things off my chest with somebody who understands, and now it's being framed as though I'm cheating on my wife. Lee Kennett added, I have not had an inappropriate relationship with him. I would not be friends with a man who thinks he's going to have an inappropriate relationship with me. Honey, no one was accusing you of being friends with this man. Again, that was me, not Gehrman's reporting. When asked why the duo didn't go to lunch or somewhere else less secretive to privately discuss work, Lee Kennett said they can't do that without someone in the office making assumptions about them. She said she suggested going into the back seat of her car because she wanted to make sure Tellis would listen to her concerns face to face. Tellis said the meeting location, which is across the street from the Clark County Government Center on South Grand Central Parkway, probably was chosen out of paranoia because of the discord in the office. According to the workers, Tellis had a temper and demeans holdover employees. He assigns them unnecessary work, has set unrealistic performance goals, won't respond to questions they have about their changing duties, and tries to dig up dirt on them. He also prohibits them from using cell phones at work and discourages them from socializing and gossiping in the office. The employees contend they are constantly worried that they won't properly follow his sometimes confusing directives and could be reprimanded or verbally abused. One worker said she eats a bag lunch every day in her car because she doesn't want to be seen socializing with staffers who aren't among Tellis's favorites. Janie, who worked as an executive assistant for 4 public administrators for over 30 years, said she retired in April because she got frustrated with the hostile environment. She said she once got so stressed that she had to take leave to deal with migraines. Tellis disputes the claims of hostility from Reed and other veteran employees. These allegations that I've chained people to the wall or something are bogus, he said. They make it sound as though everybody is miserable in this office. I've done my best to try to be as nice and friendly this whole time. For whatever reason, they just seem to want things to go back to the way they were, serving the interests of a few. Before I got here, this office was in a horrible, horrible state. Okay, end of article. Or at least the portion I'm reading. The whole thing is like 3,000 words, but is linked in the show notes. Now let's debrief, because I just threw a lot at you. Basically, this elected official named Robert Tellis was having an affair with his subordinate, which he let impact his job and workplace, and was abusive to his staff, to the point that some retired or dealt with physical symptoms like migraines. He micromanaged, even dug up dirt on his own staff members, and was an all-around terrible boss and terrible person who is facing 0 consequences for his abhorrent actions. That is, until Jeff Gehrman got involved. Over the course of 4 articles, Gehrman detailed the rise and fall of this not-so-Midwest princess, which ultimately led to this Democrat incumbent losing his primary election in June 2022 to Rita Reed, his former subordinate, serving only 1 term as Clark County Public Administrator. Do you know how bad a scandal has to be for voters to A, notice, and B, turn out to the polls against you for a local primary election for a position like public administrator? I'll be honest, I can't even tell you if Arlington County, where I live, has a public administrator, let alone who it is. Yet the people of Las Vegas took one look at Gehrman's reporting and said, hey, ho ho, Robert Tellis, got to go. Good for the people of Las Vegas, and shout out to those who are engaged in their local politics and communities. Of course, Tellis denied the allegations and even posted a wild letter on his campaign website that not only said Gehrman was lying, but also contained veiled threats against employees who would speak out against him. Clearly, Tellis is fuming. He's just lost his job, his marriage is rocked thanks to the cheating scandal, and he's been smeared in the local press, with his dirty laundry being aired out for all to read. Oh, and he has children to think about. Plus, he came from a prominent political family and didn't want to be the black sheep who brought dishonor to his family name. All of this was boiling inside Tellis as he seethed over his misfortunes and looked for someone, anyone, to blame other than him. So he did what any good bad guy does in the 2020s and took to Twitter. He called Gehrman a bully and pulled a real Katie Heron move by claiming that he was obsessed with him. I think he's mad that I haven't crawled into a hole and died, read one tweet. Then he caught wind that Gehrman may be pursuing a follow-up story about Tellis, which was his final straw. Already stripped of everything that mattered to him, he wondered what more Gehrman could possibly gain by dragging him down even further. This story had all the makings of a potential bombshell as well, because Gehrman was requesting emails and text messages between Tellis and the person who ran against him, Rita Reed, his mistress, Lee Kennett, and a consultant named Michael Murphy who was hired to ease tensions in the failing office. Tellis had to do everything in his power to stop this article from coming out. He had already hit what he thought was rock bottom and didn't want to know how much further he actually had to fall. We don't know the exact moment when Tellus decided to kill Gehrman. There was no villainous monologue, no diary entry that read, "Today I'm going to commit murder." But what we do know is that by Friday, September 2nd, Tellus was laying the groundwork. That day, around 11:18 a.m., Gehrman was seen in security footage outside his home in the 7200 block of Bronze Circle, a quiet, suburban cul-de-sac in West Las Vegas. It was Labor Day weekend, so he was off work, and he had just returned from stopping to grab a bite to eat. He opened his garage door, shut it, and then disappeared from all camera footage into the darkness of his home. But he wasn't alone. A man in a wide-brimmed straw hat, a bright orange reflective shirt, and gray sneakers can be seen lurking around the neighborhood. That man, unmistakably due to his unique gait, was Robert Tellus. Gehrman didn't know it yet, but he was being stalked by the man whose reputation he had brought down simply by telling the truth. Tellus entered his yard, went to the left side of the house inside the gate, and shut it. Minutes later, at approximately 11:26 a.m., Jeff reemerges from his home, again through the garage door, likely to do something mundane, such as tend to his yard or take out the trash. Instead, he was ambushed by Tellus, who was lying in wait nearby. There was a struggle, with Gehrman fighting back against Tellus, only to be subdued. Tellus now had the upper hand, and he used it to stab Gehrman multiple times in the neck and torso, before fleeing in a maroon GMC Yukon Denali, which was registered under his wife's name. He left Gehrman bleeding out on his own lawn, which was partially covered by vegetation that hid him from easily being viewed from the road. There weren't any witnesses, but neighbors did report overhearing a struggle. One neighbor said it sounded like a woman screaming. Another said it was just a, quote, loud, sudden shout, then silence. Jeff Gehrman's body wouldn't be discovered until the next day, Saturday, September 3rd, when a concerned colleague from the Review-Journal went to check on him after he didn't respond to calls or show up for work. That coworker called 911. Officers arrived on scene shortly after and found Gehrman outside his home, dead from multiple stab wounds. He was 69 years old. Gehrman had been stabbed 7 times. The coroner said the wounds were concentrated in the neck and torso, like I mentioned earlier. This was not a quick killing. It was up close, personal, and absolutely brutal. This was an attack by someone who wanted him dead for personal reasons, and police immediately turned to the long list of high-profile and dangerous people who he'd brought down during his long and storied career as a reporter. Fortunately, though, police wouldn't have to wait long for evidence to start pouring in. By Sunday, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department had released a grainy still from the surveillance footage. A man wearing that bright orange shirt and straw hat walking away from Gehrman's home. Publicly, Tellus wasn't on anyone's radar yet. Privately, the Review-Journal staff had some suspicions. They remembered the angry tweets. They remembered the stories Gehrman had written and the enemies he'd made. And a few of them had seen that GMC Denali before, and it even appeared in the street view of Tellus's home on Google Maps. One Review-Journal reporter, Arthur Kane, who had worked alongside Gehrman on the Tellus investigations, told police that Gehrman had expressed concern about Tellus's behavior. When police began looking into Tellus, some other red flags that weren't social media posts began to pop up. For instance, during his time as public administrator. He was arrested for choking his wife. She said on the 911 call, "Can you please send somebody here? My husband is going crazy." He ended up receiving a 90-day sentence that completely flew under the radar. Armed with this information, and a loose ID of Tellus through the unique gait that the person seen on the security footage had, favoring one leg over the other, on Tuesday, September 6th, 5 days after the murder, police served a search warrant on Tellus's home. They arrived early in the morning. Tellus was brought in for questioning while police searched the home. They collected the jeans he was wearing for evidence. They found gym shoes in a duffel bag that were a match for the ones caught on camera that day. But the kicker was still to come. In the garage, they found the exact hat worn in the surveillance footage, only it had been cut up into about 5 pieces. Weird, right? Later that same day, police collected DNA from Tellus. While we wait for that to process, let's hit on another piece of evidence. Remember those sneakers I mentioned? They, wait for it, matched prints found at the crime scene. Bingo. Okay, the DNA is done processing now, and here's what we found. It was a match for DNA found under Gehrman's fingernails. Boom. Science wins again. Now, let's talk about what prosecutors revealed after the arrest. Tellus was formally arrested on Wednesday, September 7th, and charged with murder. He didn't even make it a full week. At first, he denied everything, but the case against him was ironclad. The surveillance footage, the car, the shoes, the DNA, it was all there. And as the investigation unfolded, it became clear just how methodical and yet incredibly stupid this plan had been. Tellus had tried to disguise himself. That's why his outfit was so outlandish. But his face was still partially visible in some of the footage. And the car? He didn't even bother to rent a different vehicle. The Denali was seen leaving the crime scene right after the attack. GPS placed it there. Cameras placed it there. You know what else police found? Blood on Tellus's shoes. Blood on his clothes. And not to mention that straw hat and duffel bag. Like, dude, if you're going to commit murder, maybe don't hold on to the remnants of your disguise for the police to find. This is just like getting away with murder 101. The motive was simple. Pure revenge. Prosecutors say Tellus was furious over the articles Gehrman had written and over losing his re-election bid. He was also mad that Gehrman was working on a follow-up story that might reveal even more damning information. This was a man who felt cornered, powerless, exposed. And instead of accepting the consequences of his actions, he chose to eliminate the person who held the mirror up to him. In court, the prosecution laid it all out. And the details were even worse than we thought. They argued that Tellus had been planning this for weeks. They argued that he surveilled Gehrman's home, studied his routines, and waited for the right moment to strike. He picked a quiet, mid-morning window when few neighbors were likely to be around. He wore a costume that kind of made him look like a landscaper. He parked a few blocks away. He snuck up on Gehrman and ambushed him. But Gehrman fought back, hard. The DNA under his fingernails was from scratching and clawing at his attacker. He didn't go down without a fight. He tried to survive. He tried to make sure his killer wouldn't get away. And he succeeded. Because Jeff Gehrman left behind a crime scene so rich with evidence that even a half-decent investigator couldn't ignore it. He left behind a body with clues. He left behind coworkers and friends who were willing to speak out. He left behind people who remembered the threats and who trusted the process, not to mention Tellus's digital footprint. Despite protesting his innocence, Robert Tellus was found guilty of first-degree murder in October 2024. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. At his sentencing, Gehrman's family spoke about his legacy. about his dedication to the truth, to justice, to exposing corruption. His sister Julie said, quote, "He loves Las Vegas. He loved being a reporter. He thought it mattered." And she's right. It did matter. It still matters. Tellis, on the other hand, was defiant until the end. In court, he rambled about conspiracy, about politics, about being set up. He claimed the DNA evidence was planted. He claimed he was innocent, even going so far as to say that he was the real victim. But no one was buying it. In a move that will surprise literally no one, his wife finalized her divorce shortly after the conviction, and I'm glad that she was out of what we can be certain was a terrible marriage. Even behind bars, Tellis continues to write bizarre manifestos and appeal his conviction. He's filed lawsuits from prison, claiming mistreatment and judicial bias. It's all just noise. Because no matter how many motions he files, how many stories he spins, he will always be the man who murdered a journalist for telling the truth. Jeff Gehrman died doing the thing he loved most, holding power to account. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't chasing fame, he was just doing the work. And the world is worse without him in it. So if you take anything from this episode, let it be this. Local journalism is the backbone of democracy. It matters, it saves lives, it uncovers corruption, and sometimes, tragically, it puts good people in danger. Subscribe to your local paper, support independent media, and if you see something wrong in your community, say something. Be like Jeff. And with that, will you help me gavel us out?